This is a video for section 27 in our course. You will find the videos for section 26 in Connect Math. There's no need to submit any notes for that video, but this video, the notes should be submitted by the due date in D2L. And the only thing different about this video, and the reason that I'm just doing this real quick introduction, is because we are not going to do the prep skills portion of this video, and so you don't have to worry about that. We're just going to pick up with the regular videos for the class portion and the group portion and such, but you do not have to worry about the prep skills portion of this. So before starting this class portion, you'll want to do your, or at least look at the Myers-Brigg assessment on the page 105. Actually, it's 329 in our book, that talks about what type your personality is, because she's going to reference that.
Here we're making a Venn diagram for two people's Myers-Briggs results. You can use your own and a partner that you're working with, or here I've used two sample sets of results. So we've got Patrick, who's ENFP, and Arlene, who's ESFJ. So in number one, you're just writing down your other person's code, and then in number two, you're just labeling the two circles in the diagram with your names. Now in 3, we start filling in the Venn diagram. So it says write the letters your personality type has in common with your partners. Well, the two letters that these people have in common are the E and the F, so those go in the middle. And then 4 says write any letters that you have in your personality type but that your partner doesn't have in theirs. So for Patrick, the letters that Patrick has only that Arlene does not are the N and the P. So Patrick's circle gets the N and the P. In number 5, you're supposed to do that for the other person. So Arlene has an S and a J that Patrick doesn't have. So we'll put those in her circle. And then in 6, write the remaining letters that don't appear in either code. So you need to go back to the beginning page of the lesson and figure out which letters have not been used. So Patrick was ENFP and Arlene was ESFJ. So the two letters that have not been used are the I and the T. So we'll put those anywhere out here in the white space around the circles, but still inside the box. And then in 7, this diagram shows which personality traits these two have in common and which they don't. So we're just going to describe what this diagram tells us. Well, first of all, looking at the overlap, we can see that they're both extroverts and they both make decisions with feeling. Where they differ, though, is that Patrick is an N while Arlene is an S. So Patrick collects information through intuition, while Arlene is more likely to gather information from what she senses or observes. And then also Patrick is perceiving, which means he can play it by ear and make up a plan as he goes, while Arlene is judging, which means she likes to go into a situation with a plan already in place. Here we're looking at sets and some vocabulary that goes along with them. In number 8, which of the following sets is well defined and why? So in A, we have the set of all good shows available to binge watch on Netflix. Well, this is not well defined because we don't have an objective way of deciding whether a show is in that set or not. What constitutes a good show is an opinion. Now B, on the other hand, the set of shows with all seasons available on Netflix is well defined because we have a clear criterion. Either all seasons are available on Netflix or they are not. In 9, we're looking at using the roster method to list the elements in a set. And it wants us to flip back to question 2 and list the elements in the left circle. So let's go look at that. And be careful here because that left circle is the entire circle of Patrick's personality traits. So that would be the E, the F, the N, and the P. In 10, we're looking at the idea of a universal set. So in the case of the letters from the personality test, what's the universal set? For that, we need to flip back to the very first page that had all 8 possibilities. So the universal set would be E, I, S, N, T, F, J, and P. And for the roster method, we'll write those with the curly braces around them. In 11, we're looking at the complement of a set. The complement is denoted with the A and the apostrophe. And so in 11, for the set A that we wrote above in number 9, what is a complement? So we're looking at the universal set and trying to figure out which items in the universal set are not in A. So we can rule out E, N, F, and P, and so that leaves I, S, T, and J. Here we're looking a little more closely at what the different portions of a Venn diagram mean. So in 12, looking at this Venn diagram to the right, we're going to pick the appropriate description for each region. So region 1 is here on the far left. It is part of the A circle, but it is not in the overlap of that one with the B circle. So the appropriate description for that one then would be the elements in set A that are not in set B. Region 2 is the overlap between the two circles, so that would be the elements in both sets A and B. And region 3, over here on the far right, that's in the circle for B but not in the overlap. So that would be the elements in set B that are not in set A. And region 4 is the region outside of the circles but still inside the rectangle. So those are the elements in the universal set that are in neither set A nor set B. In 13, the set of elements that are in both sets A and B is called the intersection of A and B and is symbolized with the A and the upside down U symbol B. Write the region or regions in the Venn diagram that correspond to A intersection B. Well, the intersection is the overlap of the two circles, so that would be region 2. And in 14, the set of elements that are in at least one of sets A and B is called the union of A and B. So what that's saying is these are elements that are in A or B or both, and that is symbolized with A and a U symbol B. So the regions in the Venn diagram that correspond to A union B are everything from A and B joined together. That would be regions 1, 2, and 3.
For the group portion, number 1 and 2, we're going to skip that. It's very difficult to do without actually being in a group. So rather than force it, we're just going to skip that and go on to number 3. If you'd like to look at 1 and 2, that might be a good idea, but you're not responsible for taking notes or anything on it.
Here we're looking at a Venn diagram with two circles, but instead of listing all of the elements that are in each set, this diagram has the totals of how many are in each set. So in number 3, how many meals had less than 12 grams of fat and less than 350 calories? Well, looking at these circles, one of them represents less than 12 grams of fat and the other represents less than 350 calories. So the meals that fall into both of those categories would be in the overlap in the middle. So that would be the 142. In number 4, how many meals had less than 350 calories? Well, looking at this, in the less than 350 calorie circle, we actually have two values that we're interested in. There's the 48 that only have less than 350 calories and not less than 12 grams of fat, but then we also have the 142 in the overlap. Those 142 also have less than 350 calories. So both of these numbers fit into that category. We need to add them together. So 142 plus 48 gives us a total of 190 meals that have less than 350 calories. In number 5, how many had less than 12 grams of fat? Well, same idea, but on the other circle. So less than 12 grams of fat, there are 70 that are only in that category, but 142 in the overlap. So 70 plus 142 tells us that there are 212 meals total in that category. And then in number 6, how many had over 350 calories and over 12 grams of fat? Well, those would be the meals that didn't fit into either of these categories, and that would be the 140 that's outside the circles. Here we're given two different possible ways that a survey could be given. And in number 7, 800 undergraduate students were asked about credit and debit card habits. 616 reported carrying a debit card and 240 said they had a credit card. Thinking about that, which of these two questions above had to be the one that they were asked? Well, the issue here is that if you look at 616 carrying a debit card and 240 carrying a credit card, that adds up to more than the 800 students who were surveyed. The only way that can happen would be if some of those students were able to check more than one option. The way the first survey is phrased, it does not allow for that, so it must have been the second one because that one allowed them to check both. In number 8, why does the first question kind of stink? Well, any of these students who did have both credit cards and debit cards wouldn't know what to check because it tells them that they're only allowed to choose one. In number 9, the survey reported that 216 of the students reported having both types of cards. So if you have a Venn diagram with a circle for credit and a circle for debit, where would the 216 go? Well, it would go in region 2, which is the overlap. And so we'll go ahead and put the 216 in that region. In number 10, does the fact that the report said that 616 students carry debit cards mean that they only carry a debit card? Well, no, you have to think about that. Just because a student says that they carry a debit card doesn't mean that they only carry a debit card. We decided that some of those students had to have chosen both. So that does not mean that there are 616 students in Region 3 only carrying a debit card. So with that in mind, number 11 asks how many did carry only a debit card? Well, if we decided that 616 is the total for the entire debit card circle, including the 216 who carry both, then we need to subtract those out. So we have 616 total debit card carriers, but then we need to subtract out the 216 that also carry a credit card, and that tells us that 400 of those students only carry a debit card. In number 12, how many carried only a credit card? Well, we were also told that 240 of those students carry a credit card. We need to think about this in the same way. 216 of those carry both. So if I subtract out the 216, that tells me that there's only 24 of them that only have a credit card. And then in 13, how many carried neither? Well, we need to think about the fact then that 800 students total were surveyed. How many students are accounted for already in this Venn diagram? Well, we have 24 plus 216 plus 400. And so that comes out to 640 total students accounted for so far. So then if we take the 800 total that were surveyed and subtract out the 640 that have been accounted for, that tells us that 160 chose neither option. Here we're given a 3-circle Venn diagram talking about the toppings people like on their pizza. 14 says, according to the information that we're given in this paragraph above, 47 customers prefer pizza with pepperoni. But I don't see 47 in the Venn diagram anywhere. Why is that? Well, that's because 47 prefer pepperoni, but it doesn't mean that they only prefer pepperoni. There are lots of different categories for people who like pepperoni, and the total of those should add up to 47. So all of these values in the pepperoni circle add up to 47. So in 15, how many customers prefer pizza with only sausage? Well, that would be the main part of the sausage circle that doesn't overlap with anything else, so that would be 40. In 16, how many customers prefer pizza with all three? Well, that would be the overlap in the very center that is part of all three circles, so that would be 7. In 17, how many prefer pizza with sausage and onion? Well, there are actually 2 categories in the sausage and onion overlap, so we need to add the 7 and the 3 together to get 10. And in 18, how many don't like any? Well, for that one, we need to add up how many total responses are already accounted for and compare that to the 113 total who were surveyed. So if we add up all of the numbers in all of the regions in the Venn diagram that are filled in right now, we get 108. We were told that there were 113 total surveyed, minus the 108 that are already accounted for, means that there are only 5 who said that they didn't like any. Here we've got a Venn diagram that talks about cold and allergy symptoms. And in number 1, it asks us to list the set of cold symptoms using the roster method. Well, the cold symptoms would be everything in this left circle. So that would include fever, symptoms that last days, but it would also include all of these symptoms in the overlap: runny nose, sneezing, congestion, coughing, fatigue, watery eyes, and itchy eyes and nose. And we'll write that in roster method, which means we'll separate them with commas and surround it with the curly braces. In number 2, if C is the set of cold symptoms and A is the set of allergy symptoms, we want to write the set C intersect A. So that would be those symptoms in the overlap: runny nose, sneezing, congestion, coughing, fatigue, watery eyes, and itchy eyes and nose. In number 3, describe the symptoms that help you distinguish between a cold and allergies. So those would be the symptoms that they do not have in common. For a cold, that would be a fever or symptoms that last for days. And for allergies, it would be no fever and symptoms that last for weeks. In 4, if C is the set of cold symptoms and A is the set of allergy symptoms, how would you represent this set below? Well, looking at the set here that they've written using the roster method, there's fever last days, that's cold. Runny nose, sneezing, congestion, coughing, fatigue, watery eyes, and itchy eyes and nose are the overlap. And then no fever and lasts for weeks are the symptoms that are just allergy. So they've just described all of the symptoms in both C and A. So that would be C union A. Here we're going to use the information given to fill in this Venn diagram on the right and answer questions 5 through 7. So in a survey of 130 college students, 108 use Instagram, 37 use Facebook, and 21 use both. Well, the only thing we can fill in right off the bat there is the 21 that use both, because those are in the overlap. Then we can think about those other numbers. 108 use Instagram, but that isn't just the far left portion. That's the entire circle for people that use Instagram. So now that we know there are 21 in the overlap, we can subtract that and find out that there are 87 who only use Instagram, and that entire circle will add up to the 108. We can do the same thing for Facebook. 37 use Facebook, but 21 of those are already in the overlap. So we can subtract that and get 16 that only use Facebook. So now we'll be able to answer questions 5 and 6. In 5, how many use Instagram only? Well, that was the 108 minus 21 that gave us 87. And in 6, how many use Facebook only? Well, that was the 37 minus 21 that gave us 16. Now in 7, how many use neither? Well, there were 130 total college students who responded, and we need to figure out how many are already accounted for in the Venn diagram. So 87 plus 21 plus 16 comes out to 124 that are already accounted for. So then 130 minus those 124 means there are 6 students who didn't use either, and we'll add that to the Venn diagram outside the circles but still within the rectangle.
Okay, and we'll finish up this last bit together because the video portion from the textbook was messed up, so we'll just finish this up together. So it says here, as the different types of bacteria that cause illness evolve in drug-resistant strains, it's becoming more common for doctors to treat infections with multiple antibiotics. So TB is one of these diseases where multiple medications are often used. So we had a group of 200, circle that, patients with active TB infections enrolled in a clinical trial to test the effects of the various antibiotics. So this Venn diagram shows the number of patients who were given one or more of the drugs in the trial, and we're supposed to answer this. So how many patients were given all three drugs? Well, we've got, hopefully I pronounced these somewhere close to right, isoniazid, rifampin, and ethambutol. I'm just going to call them I, R, and E from here on out. But the patients that were given all three drugs would be in this center circle here, and they would be given the I, the R, and the E antibiotic, and so that would be 8. How many patients were given just one drug? Well, we can't look at just any one of these. One drug would mean they were given either just I, or just R, or just E. So that would be 22 that were just given I, 19 that were just given R, and 25 that were just given E. So if we add those together, those are the patients that were just given one, no matter which of the three types it was. So if we add those up, that would be 22, 32, 42, 41, 51, 61, I think we're at 66. Hopefully I've got that added up right. And then the last question on this page, or this slide, is how many patients were given R and E, but not I? So that would be, let me erase some of these circles here so we can see things a little bit better. So that would be R and E, but not I. So that would be the overlap between R and E that doesn't include I. So that would be these 15 patients here. We don't want to include these 8 because they're in the I circle, and we don't want to include, we don't want to count just the 25 and 19 because we want the ones that were given R and E, which means they were given both of them. So that would be that overlapping 15 portion. So how many patients were given exactly 2 of the 3 drugs? Well, these patients, these 6 here, were given I and E. These 18 were given I and R, and these 15 were given R and E. But we don't want to include the 8 that were given all 3. So they were given exactly 2, but not 3 of them. So 18 plus 6 plus 15 would give us 21, 31, 41, 39, I believe. Then it asks how many patients were given at least I and E. So that's a little bit different question. A little bit, we're going to kind of wrap our brain around that a little bit. What do they mean by they were given at least I and E? So that means they were given I and E, plus they could have been given something more. So I and E would be these 6, but these 8 were given I and E plus R. So they were given all of it. So at least means that much or more. So these 6 patients were given I and E, but these 8 patients were also given R. So that would be 6 plus 8 for 14. So at least means that much or more. And then how many patients were given a placebo containing none of these drugs? Well, we haven't calculated that number yet. It's not up here. We have to kind of go back and look at what it said. It said on this other slide, remember, that we had 200 patients total. Well, in order to figure out how many were given none of these drugs, we have to figure out how many people are left off the chart. So we have to add up who is on the chart. So that would be all the different categories that we have, 22 plus 18 plus 19 plus 6 plus 8 plus 15 plus 25, which only adds up to 113. So according to this question, it says they were given a placebo. Let's hope that they weren't unethical and left TB patients untreated. Let's hope that they were given some other antibiotic rather than a placebo. So anyway, let's just say they were given another drug containing none of these three, because we certainly wouldn't want to leave somebody that has tuberculosis untreated. So we're going to say 200 were in the study. We're going to subtract out the 113 that are taking one or more of these drugs, and that leaves us with 87 people that were not taking either isoniazid, rifampin, or ethambutol. Okay, so it's 87. And that's it for section 27.